Today we want to talk about the care worker visa, code 6135, and the senior care worker visa, code 6136, which are the most common care worker pathways for the UK. And we want to talk about what it is that one needs if they are applying from abroad in 2025. So guys, a big welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Florence. If you're watching me for the first time, I'm a carer, proudly a carer in the UK. I came 2 years and some months ago and I've been enjoying it. I'm loving it. I'm loving what I do. I've fallen in love. So guys, let's talk about it. I know I've shared before that there have been quite a number of changes, and we want to talk about those changes, the impact, and what is it that one can do to actually come to the UK in 2025 using the same pathway. Because the good news is that same pathway is still open. That same visa is still there. That people are still coming using the same pathway. But of course, with the number of changes to it, the numbers are going down. But we want to talk about it because the opportunity is still there. As you know, I love to talk about opportunities because for me, it's an opportunity that I came across. I grabbed it with both hands and it changed my life. And if you want to know how it has changed my life, guys, do hit the subscribe button because I'm going to be sharing in this season how this visa has changed my life, how it has changed the life for my family and my children, and all the things that are unfolding, how my life is unfolding right before my eyes. And I've got so much joy when I reflect on it. So do subscribe and stay on this channel if you want to know more, because I'm going to be unpacking my journey and take you through with me. So guys, there are things, well, first and foremost, let me talk about the changes that happened to this visa in particular. Obviously, the government realized immigration is a topical issue in this country. They want to cut down the numbers. They're serious about it. So one of the loopholes that they realized was that people coming on a health and care worker visa, which is carers and senior care workers, were bringing dependents, and that would increase the numbers. So in April last year, April of 2024, they passed a law that says if one is coming on a skilled worker visa as a carer or as a senior care worker, they would not be allowed to bring dependents. One would maybe ask to say, what do they mean by dependents? By dependents, we mean one is not allowed to bring a spouse or partner, which means you can't bring your wife, you can't bring your husband. Also on dependents, this covers children as well. So one cannot bring their spouse or partner. One cannot bring their children at all if they're on this worker visa. If they are on a code 6135 or 6136 on their COS, they cannot bring those dependents. So this had a huge impact in terms of numbers, in terms of people really responding to opportunities like that. Because I know I'm African and I like to be objective. I like to be critical when I look at opportunities. Most people were relocating because of their children. So they would not see much sense in relocating if I can't bring my children. Most people do thrive well. We are big on marriages as the African community. So most people will say, it would not work for me to relocate and leave my partner or my husband or my wife behind. So a decline in numbers, which is what the Home Office would want. It's good news to their ears. But also, guys, there are other people, because it's not everybody who has got children. It's not everybody who has got a spouse. So the opportunity is still there and people are still coming. The other change that happened was that other countries, I'll give an example to say Zimbabwe was added on the World Health Organization red list. So what that meant was that recruiters would not be allowed to recruit from Zimbabwe on behalf of organizations. However, that does not mean people cannot come to the UK directly from Zimbabwe and other red list countries like Nigeria, etc., India, etc. So what that means is one can actually apply directly to an organization if they've got a vacancy, if they've got an opportunity. So one does directly apply to the organization, directly responds to an opportunity or to a vacancy or to an advert directly to the company and not through a recruiter. So what that means is if they're interviewed, if that organization is happy with them, then they will issue them a certificate of sponsorship and then they'll come to the UK. So that pathway is still open, but then there are restrictions to it. But suppose you live in a country where it's not on the red list. I'll give you an example of someone stays in South Africa. Regardless of you being from a red list country, if you're a resident of South Africa at that point in time, you can actually relocate using a recruiter. You can actually apply for these opportunities using a recruiter. So those are two things about it. You don't necessarily have to be a South African for you to relocate with a recruiter, but you could be a citizen of a country that's on red list, but you're resident in a country which is not on red list. You can apply. I'll give you an example. Organizations like SaverCare, MMA, and others are actually recruiting Zimbabweans who live in South Africa, but they're Zimbabwean, but they live in South Africa. So you can actually reach out to them and say, I'm in South Africa, I've got experience and whatever documentation to say I'm resident in South Africa at this point in time, and they will happily recruit you. So those are some of the changes that have happened. But guys, this will lead us to talk about the essential things that you need if you are to stand a chance to relocate on this pathway. I'll also share other pathways in which people are relocating, but I thought I'll share with people because most people do ask me like, Flo, how did you do it? What is it that I need? I need this opportunity. I thought like, well, let's get down back to the basics. Let's talk about the basic requirements. Let's talk about some of the things that people need to do for them to become eligible for these opportunities. So there are three things that I do consider to be very key when somebody is job hunting. Not necessarily as a carer, but whatever job you want to tackle, whatever job you want to apply to. There are three things that I deem very necessary. So these are skills, competencies, and experience. These things are very, very important. And these things, some of the things that employers do look at when they are recruiting you. Why? Because they have never seen you work. So they rely on what you're telling them. They rely on what they see on your CV. They rely on what they see on your cover letter for them to sort of like, okay, you need to have these three things. You need to do a good job when it comes to these three things. So, but then when it comes to you relocating as a carer or as a senior care worker to the UK, there are two things at play. There is the requirements by the Home Office and also some of the requirements by organizations or by recruiters. So bear in mind these things. First and foremost, I want to talk about what the Home Office requires if you are to apply for a visa to come to the UK. There are, I think I would say there are four things that they deem necessary, and then a fifth is an employer's requirement. So obviously you need to have a passport because these are some of the documents that you take to the consulate or to the visa office when you apply for a visa. So definitely you need a valid passport. Your passport should have at least 3 to 6 months left in it for you to be able to apply for a visa. You also need the IELTS UKVI English test. This can be academic, this can be general, but IELTS General UKVI or IELTS Academic UKVI. If you are a degree holder, you can actually convert your degree through ACTIS, which used to be NARIC, and then you get an evaluation which gives you an equivalent of IELTS or any English test equivalent, so whichever is comfortable for you. You also need a TB test. You also need a police from all the countries that you've actually lived in. So if you have lived in more than one country, suppose you're a Zimbabwean citizen and then you've lived in South Africa or Dubai, any country that you have lived for over a year, you would need a police clearance from there. So it's very, very important that you put together all these things, you prepare for all these things because they are quite key. However, it's not just about that. And also, when all that is done, you need what they call a certificate of sponsorship. This is what you issued by your prospective employer or a recruiter to use to apply for a visa. So it's not necessarily a certificate, but it's a reference number that they give you, and then you put it in your application. Then it will be linked to the organization that you're going to go and work for. It's linked to everything, salary threshold and things like that. So it is a requirement. You cannot just necessarily go straight away and apply for a UK visa without it. That's the Home Office part. But I want to talk about what companies or what recruiters need. Guys, we want to be objective when we talk about opportunities. This health and care worker visa has been there since right after COVID in 2020. That's when they started this care worker visa. And this is 2025, 5 years later, this visa has been there. So obviously, there's been lessons learned from companies, recruiters, and also the whole system and people around. So obviously the bar keeps getting higher and higher, higher and higher, and stiffer. I know some people would say, but people who came before didn't need this and that. the bar has been set high. It's competitive, and this visa is not just open for Africans, but it's open for everybody worldwide. So that's why I'm always insisting on, you need to put your best foot forward. How do you put your best foot forward? Most companies, I'll speak from experience, I'll speak from what I went through, because I think I've shared this before, to say by the time I decided on the organization I was coming with, I'd had 3 successful interviews. I had 3 offers from 3 different organizations altogether, and I had to pick one that I wanted to come with. But I want to share on some of the things that can set you apart, some of the things that can make you stand out in a crowd, some of the things that can make you very marketable and competitive in this area and in this regard. I know some people would say, but you don't really need that. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I treat every opportunity with the seriousness it requires, with the best of my ability. Always put my best foot forward. I'll speak on what I would do if I were to apply from abroad in 2025. So, first and foremost, you need a good cover letter whereby you're articulating who you are as a person and what you're bringing to the table. Of course, you need a very good CV. And like we said at the start of this video, there are 3 things that are quite key when you are selling yourself as an employee or as a prospective employee. Skills, competence, and experience. These things are very, very key. So you should be able to articulate these things so well to give a picture of what is it that you're going to offer to the team that you're joining, to give a clear picture of the value and, all the things that you bring to the table. Of course, this is guided by the job description, person specification in that job advert that we are actually responding to. So most companies now, because this 2025, they're looking at competence so well. Why? Because of all the lessons that they've learned in the past 5 years, since people have been coming and they've realized some gaps in terms of experience, some gaps in terms of what we offer coming from abroad, and then practicing care in this industry. These other things that you came across for their other experiences and things like that. So training is one of the things that they are big on. So if you have got any form of training, I always say training can be done face-to-face. Training can be done online. It's very, very important that in 2025, you have some form of training. You have some form of evidence to say, I've got training in this and this. And of course, job adverts, if you check on Indeed and everywhere else, they emphasize on the fact that you have a care certificate. It's a requirement. So whatever care certificate that is available to where you are at, it's essential that you have it. I'll give you my example. I trained with Red Cross. I did the NSA training. I did the basic first aid training. I'm not saying do that. I'm not saying there's St. John's. There's so many other institutions that offer trainings. And also there are institutions like Allison, Florida Care Academy, all those online institutions do offer very valuable trainings, but you find so much value when you undertake those courses, and they can set you apart from the rest of the people. So I would encourage somebody to do, one or more of those courses related to the job itself. The second thing I want to emphasize on is on experience. This can be paid experience, voluntary experience, or personal experience. It's very, very key because this job is all about experience. It's all about hands-on. And when you do have that experience, it just sets you apart from day one. Some people never struggle, even no matter where you take them, because of the experience that they have had taking care of the elderly, taking care of poorly people, taking care of people with learning disabilities, and, things like that. They never struggle with experience. So I'll give you my example. Because I trained with Red Cross, part and parcel of their requirements were that you have to go on an attachment so that they can sign you off. So that's a 3 months attachment before you get signed off. So that was a beautiful experience that I got through doing my training with that organization. But you can actually approach organizations like care homes, children's homes, and other different organizations, depending on where you live. And you can actually offer to volunteer or to work part-time, because I know other people may say, I do have my own job that I can't leave. I never have time. You can actually choose to volunteer whenever you're available. You can choose to do part-time when you're available. Trust me, that experience will go a long way in helping you prepare for the journey ahead. The second thing I want to talk about that employers are now insisting on is the driver's license. Guys, why do I insist on that? I'm not saying it's like I said, it's not a requirement. It's not anything that can stand in the way of you getting a visa. But what I've realized is most organizations that are giving people these certificate of sponsorships, home care, which means they do community work whereby you move from one house to another. There's so many factors why I would say a driver's license is key. It's in terms of the weather in this country. You cannot say I'll do that job using public transport or walking. It's very impossible. The weather is just something else. So obviously driving is essential. The second thing is the fact that you might join an organization where their clients are not in the same place. They are like far apart, which means some of these are not on a bus route. So a driver's license is very key. I know some people go like, but people used to come without. You can imagine, I always talk about people going into the NHS, and as you have seen, a lot of people choose, once they are here, once they've got experience, they move on and start going to work in support work, in care homes, for reasons that I will share in another video. So what that means is, most organizations work and that are desperate for overseas workers are the domiciliary care workers. So if you've got no driver's license, it means you've actually limited your chances, limited the opportunities that you actually take on. And trust me, some companies, they've actually taken it further to say, without just them looking at your driver's license and saying, okay, she's got one, they want to see video of you actually driving. Because actually, there are people who came over and their driving skills weren't really there. And so they struggled a bit to fit in, struggled a bit, get the ball rolling and start going. Because when these companies do recruit us, do sponsor us to come from overseas, they actually want us to go to work as soon as we can. So for them to now have to wait for you while you're still learning your driving and stuff, and the companies have got no time for that. So it's very, very important and essential that you have a driver's license and you're working on your driving skills so that you will hit the ground running. Guys, I've said things are changing. Some companies are now even insisting on somebody having proof of funds so that they can look after themselves when they're here. I know when people came that time, those that came earlier, they would have like fully funded everything, their flights paid, their English, and everything paid for. But things evolve now, the numbers and the interest, from overseas. So things have changed. Companies are not even taking on maintenance, so they require you to have proof of funds. And also, part and parcel of why they require you to bring proof of funds is the fact that they want you to buy your own car to use for work. They want you also to pay on rent when you get here, to make sure you're comfortable and you can actually survive in this. Some organizations do require that. So it's important that if you're preparing, this is 2025, you're preparing, you want to come to the UK, make sure that you've got some funds set aside in your account, obviously, because I know some organizations would say, we'll see that you've got money set aside for this. The other thing that some organizations are insisting on, they're insisting on family support. They'll tell you, okay, do you have any family member in UK? Provide their address. Why do they do that? It's because a few problems, with us that came earlier, and they've seen a few challenges. No wonder why they insist on that. They want you to feel supported. And of course, I'll say this is a very good thing, because people that are well supported, they integrate better, they settle in quicker and better. So it's some of the things that you have to be on the lookout for as far as these companies and organizations are concerned. So guys, I don't know if there is anything that I missed out, but I think I've stated all the things that one needs to prepare. Or, of course, I've been asked before to say, what sort of a band score do I need in my English, my IELTS test? I'll say my thoughts on it. I'll say what I think about it. I'll say give it your best shot. Why do I say that? Your IELTS is an indication of your communication skills. And I've shared before, and I always share when I talk about care work, it's all about communication. Communication is one of the fundamental things of care. It's one of the 6 C's of care, communication. So it's an indicator of where you can communicate with the clients, communicate with their families, communicate with your colleagues. So it's important. And like I said, the competition is stiffer, and they're not just focusing on Africa, but the world over. So if you say, the Home Office will say, the minimum requirement is a band 4, but you realize some organizations want band 6, band 5. So it's important that you work on it and you give it your best shot as ever. So I think those are some of the things that I thought I would share with people. Of course, when you get invited to an interview, guys, do the best that you can, because I mean, getting as far as the interview stage is a sign that they've seen something in you. They've seen something in your CV. They've seen something in your cover letter. They've seen something in even the documents that you've submitted. They see value, but it's all about you just now translating or articulating what you've put in your CV, what you've put in your cover letter, into actual conversations, into talking to the people. And I think I've shared a number of videos where I shared tips on interviews and everything. And guys, I wish you all the best in 2025. Just know that that opportunity is still there. This country still needs, because they still need support workers. I'll just touch briefly before I go on why I think it's gonna stay for a while. Because they've actually seen a drop in numbers with all the implementations that they've put in place. So they're actually attracting the numbers that they require. So just make sure you are amongst all those people that they are attracting, because they've nearly halved. I shared a video on why there's been a significant drop in numbers. So which means I think for a while that visa route is going to still be open. So you do your part. Also, I've just been thinking about it. This visa has been there for about 5 years now. A lot of people that came in 2020 are now starting to apply for their indefinite leave to remain. What that means is they will not, if they get their indefinite leave to remain, they will not be bound. You can only work in care. They won't even need to renew their visas. They will be on a pathway to citizenship. So what that means is other people will go into other jobs. They are now spoiled for choice. They are not bound just by care work alone. Of course, even in those 5 years, other people have been studying, other people have been going to school, other people have been doing other things. So what that means is by the time that they get to their indefinite leave to remain, they are now integrating into other careers. So which means that as they are expanding into other careers, they are leaving a void, and that void is for you to fill. So the opportunity will always be there. So I'll see you in our next video. Bye for now.